Okay, so we're about to sit down with the 2003 Anchor Bay release edition, special box set of the Evil Dead trilogy. And this is the original Evil Dead. I'm your commentator, John Millward, and yeah, we're going to sit down and watch some scares. Here we go, Renaissance Pictures presents The Evil Dead. Just a little marker for you there. So yeah, I mean, what do we say about the original Evil Dead movie? Obviously, if you're a staunch horror fan, you probably know everything about this movie that there is to know. Obviously, directed by the legendary Sam Raimi, produced by Robert Tabbitt and Bruce Campbell, the legend that is Bruce Campbell. I think one of the great things about this movie, for me in particular, as an amateur filmmaker, is this is one of the films that inspired me to become a filmmaker. I was always a big horror fan, and then obviously seeing films like The Evil Dead and Peter Jackson's Bad Taste, they were films that had very much their own style, very much their own identity, either a weird or interesting or different kind of premise for a story, but then on top of that, very much done in an amateur style. And you could kind of tell how things were done, and you could see how things were shot and how easily they may be for yourself to replicate. And it really gave me like the kind of itch, the filmmaker's bug, after watching films like The Evil Dead. We're opening up here with the Delta Classic and a big red truck coming along the road as our intrepid teens are driving to the secluded cabin. This is obviously Bruce Campbell's, well, technically not his first film role, but his first real feature-length film role. And they're all just like young kids at this point. I think, when are we talking? 1981 here? It's got to be said that the acting isn't the best ever. But again, you can kind of ignore all these kind of tropes. Some of the effects aren't going to be as stellar as obviously as you're going to see today. Where are we now? We're 2023 now, and I've just come back from watching the brand new Evil Dead Rise that's just released at the cinema, and this has inspired me to do this commentary. So it's kind of almost full circle for me now personally that we can still be watching Evil Dead, brand new Evil Dead movies coming out in 2023. So, I mean, what the hell is that? That's, 40 odd years later? Here we go, Dangerous Bridge. Travel at own risk. It's got to be said that this is a rickety bridge. Great bits of comedy there. This is one of the things about early 80s movies. Did nobody have a comb? I mean, when you look at the hairstyles, I don't know, it's just something about it. What is going on? I think it was always said that Sam Raimi always said about this movie that he kind of wanted to put it outside of any kind of time period. So it's not meant to be shot in the 70s or the 60s or the 80s. It's supposed to be this kind of very, neutral time period. They even chose hairstyles and clothes that wouldn't be assigned to a particular decade or era. How successful that is, that's kind of up to your interpretation, I guess. But for me, it doesn't really work at all. This is clearly shot in the very, very late 70s, or very early 80s kind of time frame. But again, great setup. Bunch of teens in a car driving to a secluded cabin, an old wooden cabin in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere, and they discover something in the basement. It's just classic. The old rickety swinging chair there. I think a lot of the decor and things were purposely built by the crew as well. So everything was kind of very guerrilla filmmaking style. So a lot of the props and everything we see has all been like kind of glued together by the crew, and I think the art director Tom Sullivan. Again, saying that there was an art director on Evil Dead is a bit kind of at this point a bit silly, really, because obviously it's just this is one of those great movies that was just shot with a bunch of, you know, enthusiastic friends getting together. You know, hey, you be the producer, you be the director, I'll be the art director, and we'll make a movie. But I mean, past that, it's not much more than that, really, at this point. But it's great. It's great for that reason, because it's amateur filmmaking at its finest, in my personal opinion. And everybody brings something to this movie. I mean, all the roles of all the teens. So the actor that plays Scotty here is trying to open the door to the cabin. He's great. He's got a great personality. He brings a lot to the screen. Shelley, the character Shelley, they're all great in their own way, and they all have very distinctive personalities, distinctive looks, which helps a lot when people start turning into demons, and they all have their own kind of different angles. This film very much is like almost like a precursor to the comic book horror movie. There's more examples of that now in the modern age, but this is, for my kind of money, Evil Dead, and as the sequels go on, Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, they're very much like precursors to the comic book movies. Sam Raimi himself would obviously go on to direct his own Spider-Man trilogy for Marvel. Years later. But this film feels like in the similar sort of vein. At least to me, anyway. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but fans out there would probably follow me on that, I hope. And here we have the old shed, which looks like a shed out of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre for some reason. There's just all kinds of implements and saws and knives and axes hanging up everywhere. What was going on in this shed before these kids arrived, originally? Now the sun sinks on the first night in the cabin. The ticking clock there with the swinging pendulum, that's a trope that still exists in today's recent Evil Dead films. Some things never get old, really. Apart from me, I'm getting old now. I remember seeing this movie on DVD for the first time when I was about 18. So that would have been nearly 30 years ago now. So that really ages me. God, I feel old. And we're just watching Shelley now doing her drawings as she is about to become possessed by something. Which is odd, because obviously they've not read from the book yet. So what's possessing her, and why is it possessing her if the demons haven't been summoned? And this weirdly happens in Evil Dead Rise as well. Things happen before the demons turn up and before the book is read. So how is that a thing? And I know what you're thinking. Maybe it's, it's a nearly 40-year-old movie now, low budget horror movie. Maybe it's not really the time and place to be thinking too much about it. It's just, just enjoy the film. Just enjoy it. There's something in the cellar. Or is there? Cut to what is obviously meant to be a reference to some sort of bloody drink, Bloody Mary maybe, but doesn't really come off as blood as much as it does some sort of grapefruit juice, which I think is probably more accurate to what it actually was. And the dinner table scene here is very scant because obviously it's a low budget movie. I think Sam Raimi himself says that they literally just had a couple of loaves of bread and some salad and tomato ketchup, and that was literally all they had to eat. Pour it down. Yeah, Bert. Something's in the basement. Don't look in the basement. Which is, another great film. Look at that chin. Look at that chin on Bruce Campbell. If chins could kill, there we go. I love all this free-handed... You can tell it's really amateurly filmed, free-handed, handheld shots. Just the kind of wobble, the wiggle, as they pan around all the people's faces. Fun fact, the basement here, because they basically built this cabin almost from scratch, there is no basement. It's just a big hole in the ground. So when the actors step into the hole, they're not going anywhere really, apart from just beyond the floorboards. And then when we actually go down into the basement, it's a whole new place. It's somebody's cellar, somebody's house's cellar. I think one of the friends of the crew or something. It's their cellar at their home in a whole other state, I think. So that often the actors and the cast and crew of this movie always talk about this film being like almost like Vietnam, like they stayed for months and months out in this cold cabin, living and working there, and just living and working the movie. I think that's one of the most endearing things about this film. Again, for me personally, as an amateur filmmaker, that's one of the things I love about this movie it's that these friends got together, made a movie, and lived and breathed their filmmaking for, I think it was a year or so. So that they'd have no heating, no plumbing, no water. They'd have to go to a stream to wash, all that good stuff. And, you don't hear about filmmaking on that kind of level anymore, especially films that end up in the cinema. It just doesn't really happen anymore. Look at those loafers. That definitely doesn't date the movie. Good, creepy pan shot. So again, you'll notice there's a window there. There's a window with light coming through it. Where's that window on the outside of the building? Exactly. I mean, it's a cool cellar location. I'm not sure how much the owners felt about them decorating it with bones and hanging bits and pieces all over the place. I think what's also great about the Evil Dead movie is that it's a legitimate, pure horror movie. Yeah, it has some of the flair of Sam Raimi, and yeah, there are some comedic moments, but it's not a comedy movie by any stretch of the imagination. It's a pure horror movie. And I think what I really love about the Evil Dead series is, at least with 1 and 2 and 3, you have a movie that starts with pure horror with some comedic elements. Evil Dead 2 is just a comic book farce movie, but has some horror elements. And then, the Army of Darkness, they didn't even call it Evil Dead, but the Army of Darkness is just pure comedy with a flavouring, just a hint of horror attached to it. But I kind of like that. I can live with that. But when you think about Evil Dead, the original, and then Army of Darkness, and even the the Evil Dead series, it's just such a huge leap. But I'd like to think, if you watch all the movies, it's a slow progression from horror to comedy. The two genres are very similar either way, so... There's a great ripped poster there of The Hills Have Eyes. There was a bit of a, back in the day, in the 80s, I guess you'd call it a friendly rivalry between the late great Wes Craven and Sam Raimi. So there's a purposely put Hills Have Eyes poster ripped, torn in the background there, as a little nod to Wes Craven. And I think, if I remember rightly, in Evil Dead 2, they have a Freddy's glove hanging above the cabin door. I'm sure that's in the second movie. I might be wrong. Here's some of the awesome props now. So we've got the Necronomicon, the Cardarian dagger, and the old audio tape. These things were created by the production artist Tom Sullivan, who went on to great acclaim, but again, in this movie, just a young kid, a young whippersnapper. But, you know, I think, again, for the budget, for the time, for the setting, did a great job. My personal favourite is the Necronomicon from Evil Dead 2. It's got to be said. Really badly composited moon shot there. So I'm watching the DVD version. I do have the Blu-ray, and on the Blu-ray, the matte box that goes around the moon is kind of mapped in a lot better. But on this edition, you can really see the matte line. But again, I like all that kind of stuff. It's, you know, just those little niche bits of the movie that make it, I don't know, more reachable, more interesting to view. So, I mean, picture this, you know, you're a young teenager with a bunch of your friends and your girlfriend. You go out to this secluded cabin in the middle of nowhere, and you find an old book that looks like it's made from human skin in the cellar with an audio recording, and you play it, and it talks about reciting the passages to summon the dead. You leave at that point. I mean, you do. Anybody in their right mind just walks out of that cabin and drives home. Good use of lightning there. See, I agree with Shelley. Turn it off. I've seen enough horror movies. I'm not playing that stuff. What I really like about the Evil Dead Rise movie, which is the brand new movie that's just come out, is that they have the same sort of setup, you know, the book, the audio recording, but in the new movie they have 3 vinyl records that the sort of, you know, the recording is on. I just like that more than this old real recorder. Condor! Again, other than Shelley, all the rest of these teens are very, very relaxed about this. They've just read from this evil passage, from this evil demonic book. Straight away, instantly, a tree comes crashing through the window and they don't think that much of it. They don't seem that alarmed. Also, who owns this cabin? Who's let these kids stay here? I don't think it ever really gets mentioned in the movie. Well, things are going to get a lot worse before they get any better. Oh, Ash, you crazy romantic. They just don't make movies like this anymore, you know. Classic romance, boy wants to give a girl his first bit of jewellery and whisper sweet nothings into their ear, probably. Look at that box. That's a beautiful box. I also love the close-up on Bruce Campbell's eyes here, because he's clearly got a unibrow. Needs a bit of a wax. It's very cute, though. So the box, I mean, let's be honest here, it looks terrible. And then the thing that he's given her is not great looking. I can't remember if it was gold, the original item, because everything, they obviously just bought it from a, cheap jeweller's. I can't remember if Sam Raimi says that the magnifying glass or whatever it is sprayed gold because it was originally silver and they wanted to make it look gold, or if it was the other way around. But either way, the paint rubbed off and it just comes across looking really cheap and naff. But she's happy with it, and that's the main thing. That's all that matters. And he gets a kiss for as a thank you. Which is nice. But something's outside. Something lurks outside. The Force. Not the Star Wars kind. So Ash and his girlfriend have clearly finished kissing and are now just going to sit in front of the fire. What are these kids doing for entertainment? Well, we know what two of them are doing for entertainment. That's the only and last bit of nudity in this movie. But, done with a lot of class and very subtle. Join us. Shelley knows what's going on. She's got no boyfriend, so no hanky-panky for her. I guess the only thing she can do is go into the woods following a strange voice. Because again, that's what you would do in the real world. If you heard something outside, or some creepy voice in the middle of nowhere, in the darkness woods and things like that, you're going to go out. Of course. Great use of fog. Again, another thing that's missing from a lot of horror movies. All you need is a bit of lightning, some fog, the moon lighting the trees up. And obviously we're building towards one of Evil Dead's most notorious scenes. Well, the most notorious scene in the movie, and probably in the whole series, to be honest. And that's saying something at this point. Another terrible matte shot of the moon. It looks like she's walking towards some sort of cinema screen. But that's okay, folks. That's okay. So Sam Raimi has gone on record on numerous occasions saying that the obviously the tree rape scene that we're about to witness was a big mistake for him and for the film and the series in general. Unfortunately, it's really it sounds like a bit of an excuse. It is of the time. I mean, when you think this film was shot in maybe very early 80s, 1979, 1980, something like that. You're coming off the back of all the old exploitation 1970s movies. A lot of those films used rape as a kind of narrative device. A lot of, obviously, like rape revenge films came out around this time. So it was in the kind of lexicon of cinema. I guess, the way people just kind of did scenes back in those days. And again, it's something you're hard pushed to see in modern cinema and use so casually and so kind of just matter-of-factly. Like the rape doesn't really enter into the story as such. It's not made a big deal out of as such. It's just kind of glossed over as she was attacked and she's been traumatized, but not for obviously being violated by trees. That doesn't really come back at any point. And, arguably maybe for the best. And it's a prolonged sequence. It's got to be said. It's a prolonged sequence. I still think it's kind of interesting, though, when you look at the kind of logistics of the scene, how on a no budget, they did a lot of this stuff. I imagine it was quite hard, obviously, for the actress involved to film, but, I mean, just logistically to kind of set this up and make this work. Because it does work. And, it does feel like these vines are alive and are wrapping around the woman's legs and things like that. But, yeah, that just rammed straight home. Oh, dear. But again, nothing as shocking kind of... we never see anything like this again in the rest of the series. Which does set this film apart from all the others in the franchise. For better or for worse. And here comes the famous, I guess, the first chase scene in the Evil Dead history. The Force is coming after her now. But these items, these mechanics are never really clearly defined in the Evil Dead universe. Like, is the Force separate from the woods and the tree possession? Is it all part of the same group of demons? Is it a group, or is it just a sort of amorphous entity of some kind? Like, it's never really explained properly. And it doesn't need to be. It doesn't matter. Especially at this point, when we're on film 1. Again, the actress is basically running barefoot through woods at this point, and I think cut her feet open on multiple occasions. And getting obviously scraped and scratched along the way. I mean, she worked hard on this film, let's be honest. I think a lot of the cuts and wounds that we see on her are probably real at this point. And where is everybody? The cabin isn't that big. If you hear your best friend banging on the door, you go to the door pretty quick. Stop using logic, John. Naughty. Again, the old Steadicam shot, although it's not really a Steadicam. Again, the amateur nature of this movie, I think Sam Raimi and Rob Tabbert just nailed, I think they said they nailed a camera in the middle of a piece of 2x4 and just held it at either end and ran with it. Which is like a faux Steadicam. I also love how the Force can be just shut out of the door and it retreats, like, really disappointed. You always hear it going, oh. So a lot of this kind of intense argument scene is ad-libbed, and there is a point where I think Scotty, the character Scotty, the actor flubs his line and you can see him whack his head back, but they just pan away really quick. Yeah, just there. He's like, oh, I forgot my line, and they just pan away from him really quickly. They had to cut there as well because apparently Bruce Campbell couldn't even get his jacket on straight, so they just cut. I think it works though. I don't think unless you're told these things, you don't know. I don't think you'd see them. And again, I think I'm just massively impressed by what was achieved for this movie. And the fact that it isn't just a stereotypical horror film. There are cinematic flares and flourishes, interesting angle shots, etc. There is a certain amount of stylization to the makeups. The comedy elements are there as well. So I think Evil Dead is a lot more sophisticated than most people would probably give it credit for. The Delta Classic, a film that is featured in pretty much every single one of Sam Raimi's movies, even in The Quick and the Dead, which is a Western. I think it was disguised as a wagon or something, but the car was in the film. So it's not made clear in this film, I don't think, but Ash and Shelley are in fact brother and sister. I'm not sure how she's credited in the final scenes, though. We know that Ash is Ash Williams. What's Shelley? Well, everything's going to be okay now, folks. I mean, the victim, Shelley's been taken by Ash, driven away. They made it. Or did they? Interesting camera angle there. So there's almost like a weird Dutch angle, but they then angled the car to match the angle of the camera. So then when Ash steps out of the car, he literally starts walking almost sideways, on a 90-degree angle. It's really weird. It's a weird shot, but it's cool. Inventive. And the same shot there for Shelley. It's very brief, very quick. And here we see that the presence, whatever you want to call it, the evil has destroyed the bridge. So the bridge they used to cross to get to this, I guess the cabin, is gone. So they're trapped. It's amazing that the Force could, in fact, destroy a bridge, but it couldn't get through a door, a locked door. I don't think the door was even locked. But so there's that. Shelley is not happy about this. A little bit because she's beating her fists against the floor. Again, it's not overacted, it's just overstated slightly, I think, the acting. So it kind of gives you that comic book feel, Ash's first response to all this is to replay the tape, because it hasn't caused enough trouble already. Look how clean shaven he is. It's interesting because her friend, they're playing the card game, and her friend's just lying to her, telling her she's getting the cards right when she's not getting the cards right. It does set up this really creepy scene, though, which is the first introduction of the first demon. Jack of Diamonds. There's no subtlety to this film whatsoever. And here we have the first demon, the Shelley demon. And again, for the low budget means, great shot. Just an actor strapped to a big chunk of wood that the filmmakers at the other end are just pushing down, so it's like a seesaw effect. And they just made sure that the actor was sat in front of a window so they could poke the stick through. Great. And it works. It's perfectly fine as an effect. Never go up to a sleeping demon. Just like the quick movements of the demons as well. They just sort of spring up, their eyes are open, they kind of pop alive like toys. I was like, that's what I mean. Like, this film doesn't take itself that seriously, really. The violence is quite, slapsticky and silly, really. But then the gore's delivered. So you get... There's an interesting kind of dichotomy there, I think. And also, a pencil to the ankle is pretty horrific. It's a great weapon, pencil. The dummy head isn't great. It's got to be said. And Scotty Boy has managed to knock her down into the cellar. I mean, that'll do for now, surely. I love the expression on Scotty's face. It's like, what the hell is going on? And Ash Williams, being a good boyfriend, goes to check on his injured girlfriend. As we all would. I mean, nobody thinks to... I guess this is before the digital age, so there's no mobile phones. I mean, what's the plan here? They're going to lock one of their friends, who's obviously turned into some sort of demon creature, in the cellar and just sit by the fire? I mean, to be fair, what do you do? I mean, we've all been in this situation before, haven't we, where we've been at a house party and one friend's got too drunk, one thing leads to another, somebody reads from a demon book, and then a friend comes possessed, and it's just like, lock him in the cellar. I mean, I guess it's a bit like being drunk, isn't it? If one of your friend gets drunk, you just kind of wait until they fall asleep and draw rude, symbols on their foreheads. It's very stressful. I think the most important question is what actually happened to her hands, other than getting covered in liquid latex. I'm going to say this. I still think some of the effects are okay. I think I think certain designs on the Cheryl makeup and Linda's makeup later on, I think that it works really well. It's just obviously that they used really cheap materials, cheap latex that obviously, started to rub off and degrade really quickly whilst filming. But again, for having zero budget, for being trapped in the middle of these woods and just sort of living and breathing this movie and having very few materials to go on, what was achieved in this movie is incredible. And, look past its flaws, it still works. I think this film's still scary. Or at the very least, entertaining. But, now this is a lot coming from me. I think Evil Dead was due a remake. I'm not a massive fan of remakes. I don't think many people are massive fans of remakes. I don't know how apt that is to even say anymore. But suffice to say, I think if a film is generally more than 20 years old and has, you know, a good story, a good setup, good design, but obviously is very limited on budget, so things age very badly. They could do with maybe a remake. It doesn't apply to every movie, but I think something like Evil Dead, where they clearly didn't have enough money to even achieve what they wanted originally, I think you can see that in some films. And in those cases, I think remaking a film years and years and years and years later, rejuvenate it with a bit of a budget, I think that's not a bad thing. It just doesn't need to happen for every movie. A lot of studios, modern studios, use remakes as just a quick cash grab. I think one of the worst examples of that recently, well, in the last few years, was the Total Recall remake. It didn't need to happen. The original was great, the effects were great, the story was great, the acting was fine. Why remake that movie? And make it worse? Where's Scotty's girlfriend? Is she behind door number 1? I think it's very inconsistent because I think the effects on the girlfriend here, I can never remember this character's name. Scotty's girlfriend isn't great. But then I think the rest are pretty cool, pretty good. What's behind the curtain? Oh, there she is. Oh, clawed across the face. Again, it's all very phonetic, very, very crazed. Great camera angles over the top. Lots of spinning round. Again, it's very... I don't know, it's just... You know, it's as stylized as it needs to be to differentiate itself from other horror fare of that time. Yeah. Clearly somebody just threw a bunch of latex and paint on that girl's poor face. It doesn't work at all. But then Cheryl's makeup looks awesome at the minute, where she's banging away in the cellar there. For those of you listening, you can probably hear my cat Sam running around, so just apologies for that. And Ash is really, really milking the fact that he's trapped under that styrofoam bookshelf. He can't get away. He can't help his friend. It's so heavy. That lightweight balsa wood frame. I love the fact that Scotty's got a knife in a little knife holster on his back. Something about it screams Resident Evil to me. I don't know why. Just having the standard knife in a Resident Evil game. Maybe it was inspired from this film, Evil Dead. Again, this is over the top. It's ridiculous. It's unnecessary. Why would she chew off her own hand? But she does, and it's glorious. I guess it didn't taste very nice, though. Here's the old Kandarian dagger in your back. We've all been there. A good note, something to spot in the background there, that the clock has stopped, including the pendulum. It's frozen because time has stopped. Pretty cool. I love how the blood bleeds out the back of the Kandarian dagger. It's just little touches. They put effort into this film, and it clearly shows. And again, you can't say that for a lot of modern cinema fare. This is gross. Sort of milk blood mixed together, splurting out of the severed stump and mouth of the demon. Love it. You don't see that every day, folks. And I don't know who is in that makeup, but it's clearly not the actress, the original actress. So obviously this was a very guerrilla shot film, and a lot of the actors left after a period of time. They were here for, I think, over a year, just living in this isolated cabin and shooting this film. And I think some of the actors just had to leave, get out, because they had enough. And you see that a lot because there's a lot of stand-ins, you know, some of the cast and crew exchanging roles and just playing bit parts and just throwing make blood all over their faces and pretending to be other characters. I think it happens with Scotty in some shots where it's not actually the actor, the original actor, it's one of the crew. And I think it happens a few times with various demons as well. Again, this disembowelment, this cutting up of the body, it's really great. It's done pretty well. The blood going over the lens and making everything red, that's a great choice. It's got to be said, Scotty's really pulling his weight here, and Ash not so much. Twitching body parts, absolutely brilliant. Again, really simple effect, just holes in the floor and various people putting their limbs through and just making the little stumps and the bloody marks. It's great. Simple, effective. Yeah, Scotty's taken this really well. The fact that his girlfriend's just turned into a demon and he's then had to chop her into little pieces that are still moving. And they're going to have to... Yeah, I mean, the next logical step, bury her. You got to bury the body in the garden. Or in the backyard, or wherever it is. It's just so funny seeing these two guys dragging this bag of body parts through the woods and falling over. Doing a very quick job of the burial as well, it's got to be said. I mean, that's a shallow grave. And one of the classic kind of tropes of Evil Dead movies, crafting your own grave marker, your own cross. Why they would go to that trouble, I don't, or even think of it. I've no idea, but that's something that becomes a staple in Evil Dead. And again, it's great. Scotty's sort of spontaneously grown some more claw marks on the, I think it's the left-hand side of his face that weren't there earlier. Well, Scotty's had enough. He's done. And, you know, you can't blame the guy. You've chopped your girlfriend. You came, you came away for a weekend with your mates to get drunk and do some crazy stuff and party in the middle of the woods in a broken down cabin, and you know, you've chopped up your girlfriend. She's become a demonic creature, and now she's been buried. You know, and he's done, and you can't blame the guy. I think it's safe to say that they're not going to get the deposit back on this cabin either. So it looks like there's only one girlfriend left alive. She seems fine. I'd like to think that Ash was just going down the other end of the bed to pull the cover back just to check on her foot, but we all know what's really going on. It's a great keyframe animation there of the diseased wound spreading across the leg. Oh, and jump scare. But it's okay. I think the film's earned this jump scare. This is a really cool makeup as well. Like I say, I think some of the makeup works. I think the doll makeup, I think it's called, very creepy. The modulation on the voice really works as well. Adds to that. The fact that she's not doing anything as well other than grinning at them and staring at them, that's creepy. And it works, you know. And so quickly we're down to the last survivor. Well, Scott is still alive. I guess I shouldn't speak too soon. I have seen this film before, though. And, you know, the best way to help your friend who's been attacked by living trees and is presumably dying is to bash him around and slap him about. When did Ash get his medical degree, do you think? So apparently the actress who played Shelley had to have those, like, I think they were called sclero eye lenses that were basically big balls of glass that almost encompassed the entire eye. And they could only keep them in for like 20 minutes because otherwise they'd start damaging the eyeballs. And they were incredibly painful, apparently. And again, we're talking about a bunch of amateurs here, just sort of with dirty hands shoving glass into your eye. I mean, I can't imagine it was particularly comfortable. So Ash is, at this point, is obviously having a breakdown as his girlfriend laughs at him maniacally. I love the makeup on this girl as well because it's different again, and she looks just like some sort of, I don't know, China doll. And it being of the time, again, we're talking, what, 1980? 1979, 1980. You've only got two choices here when your girlfriend's turned into a demon. You either shoot her point blank in the face with a shotgun or punch her repeatedly in the face. And Ash, being our eponymous hero, he can't bring himself to shoot his girlfriend straight in the face. If it were me, I don't know. I don't know where I'd lie. But then we've got the classic demon switcheroo. So she's turned back to normal, begging for her life. Please, Ash, no. And obviously we know now not to fall for that. That old chestnut. But again, the actress is doing a good job here. She's crying, begging, please, Ash, don't. And, you know, we feel this. We feel this scene. And again, all the demons are joining in with the lie here, the trick. And it's just this voice, this disembodied voice coming out from the cellar door. I'm all right, Ash, let me out, come on. Things have taken a turn. And will Ash fall for it? That's what we're looking at here. And this is the thing. This is another thing with Evil Dead and some other horror films franchises. It's why do characters feel like they have to get as close as absolutely possible? If you had a thought in your head just for a moment that just maybe, the demons, the monsters, whatever, the evil spirits, they might just be playing a joke on me here. They might just be luring me into a false sense of security. Maybe not put your face as close as possible. Ash finds out the hard way here. Arms bursting through the floor and grabbing around his face. And I think it's widely known that Bruce Campbell had a hell of a time on this movie. And he did in all the subsequent sequels. Sam Raimi, the director, obviously. Him and Rob Tabbert, the producer, and Bruce Campbell, the threesome, the triumvirate. They were there, obviously, the main creators behind these movies. And Sam Raimi being like one of Bruce Campbell's oldest friends, gave Bruce basically bullied him and put him through hell on this film. Again, it's just really creepy. The taunting of the demons. It's creepy. But I think this is a good move by Ash at this point. You know, he's had enough. He's going to drag his girlfriend by the legs down the stairs, which must have hurt the poor actress's back. And he's going to drag her into the old work shed to do what needs to be done, the dismemberment. Or maybe I've jumped ahead. Or maybe he's not going to dismember her. He's just dragged her outside and left her there. I think I'm thinking of Evil Dead 2. Yeah, Scotty's seen better days. Has that been established within the lore thus far in the movie, that we're waiting for the sunrise? I mean, I guess classic mythology suggests that demons are banished by the sunrise, I guess. Scotty's had way too much to drink. I know how he feels. I've looked like that on some mornings when I've been on an all-nighter. Yeah, Scotty's not coming back from this. So now it's official. It's Ash on his own. But obviously, what are the choices? He's got nowhere to go. He can't get off the island or wherever they are. He can't drive anywhere. Can't go anywhere. And here comes girlfriend. I can't remember the girlfriend's name. It's escaping me at the minute. She licks the blade. That's so gross, but awesome. And again, it's just great. It's so slapstick. It's hilarious. Yeah, a lot of people do say that Evil Dead is a straightforward horror, and I guess it is. I mean, basically, it is just a straightforward horror, but there is still all these flavourings of comedy and slapstick and kind of a comic book element to it. But he's in a tricky situation. He's got the demon downstairs grabbing his leg. He's got the other girlfriend demon trying to rip his face off. It's tough. And again, with the Kardarian dagger, we're going right into the back. Right into the back. More milk. I wonder if these demons are androids. If we were in the alien universe, it would suggest that they were androids. Gobbing up milk. Maybe they only gob up milk when they are dead. When they're defeated, when it's like official. The demon's dead, so its last dying thing, it coughs up a load of milk. And you can really tell the kind of guerrilla filmmaking here, because we're looking at a slide rail shot, like a pan shot across the floor here, from right to left. And I think, if I remember rightly, they had another piece of 2x4 that they covered in duct tape, and then just slathered the duct tape with petroleum jelly or something like that, I think. And then they just slid the camera across the plank, which I think's very ingenious. But it is kind of it's not a smooth track. But it works. Again, I can appreciate that. Now, okay, here we are. So I was right. The Ash has taken his girlfriend to the work shed. He's now chaining her up. It's like this shed was designed for demon dismemberment. There just happened to be a chainsaw ready to go. It's got to be done. And this is the thing that people talk about with Evil Dead 2. It's essentially a remake. It's not really a sequel as such. Or it's a sequel/remake. Because it's essentially exactly the same plot. And people would say that, obviously, Ash, if he did survive at the end of this movie, why would he go back to the same cabin and have the same encounter happen to him all over again? He's just not good with relationships, Ash. I think it's safe to say at this point. He didn't learn his lesson. But it's hard, it's hard to cut up your girlfriend. It's an emotional thing. And again, he brings her out of the shed. Surely, yeah, we're going to bury her. I love... what I love about Evil Dead is that it's the light sources. So they obviously just had a couple of like floodlights, some just generic, I guess, sort of, I don't know, garden variety floodlights of some sort, because the light sources just keep coming in from all kinds of directions for no real reason. So we're outside now and watching Ash bury his girlfriend, and there's just a big load of light flooding over them. Where are they coming from, you know? But you don't go outside and leave a demon inside. It's going to break loose. This sequence here is a great recall to the earlier sequence, the eye games, where, you know, the eyes open, but then Ash looks over and they're closed, and they open again and they're closed. What's going to happen? Shelly Demon is determined to get out of that basement. And it looks like she's achieved it. It's always one of those things I love about movies, especially like sort of independent, low-budget movies where, I don't know, there might be a dead person or somebody's playing dead and they've got to look like they're not breathing or moving. It's actually a lot harder to do than you'd think. And there's a couple of shots here where you can clearly see the nostrils moving and the eyes flickering just ever so slightly, so it gives it away. But still, again, it is what it is, and it's great. It has actually been, I think, at least a couple of years since I last saw this movie. And I think as Ash puts the body in the ground, I think, again, it's one of the crew members with a wig on. Not particularly convincing wig either. But that's what they call a shemp, which is like another, a sort of local, sort of in-joke term for a, you know, a stand-in, essentially. Stand-in actor. Actor inverted commas. Great shot here, where Ash pours the dirt over the camera. That can't have been good for the camera either. Covering it in dirt like that. Now we have two graves with two very nicely made headstones. Well, crosses. Ash is nothing if not consistent. But you can't forget the necklace, the magnifier necklace. Is that going to come into play later? Oh, it's another jump scare. She's still around. She's still kicking. Oh, this great shot where she just strips the skin off his leg. Oh, that's going to leave a mark in the morning. That's gotta hurt. Oh. Now he's hitting her with a piece of massive lump of wood. This is like the balsa wood stuff, so it's basically like a foam, piece of long foam, but they've decorated it to look like wood, you know. It's a great prop because you can just keep hammering somebody repeatedly over and over again. And this is the great thing. This was on a Video Nasties list. So in the UK in the sort of 70s and 80s, there was a Video Nasties censorship list, and lots of horror films were put on that list. So they were banned in England for, at least a couple of decades. And Evil Dead was on that list, and it was banned, and you couldn't play it. And when you look back at this movie and you just see the ridiculousness of it, and the silliness of it, and the fun, it's hard to believe from a modern point of view that this could really be banned, seen as so inappropriate that people weren't allowed to view it. It's hard to believe. Yes, it's gory. Yes, there's violence, but it's so silly and over the top, and just the way he hits the body repeatedly over and over and over again with that piece of wood and what have you, and then cuts her head off. It's just ridiculous. It's great, but it's silly. Ash comes back to the cabin and uh-oh. The trapdoor's been broken. So she's either upstairs now or he's got to go down. Great creaking door moment there. Classic horror trope. Can't beat it. Not even with a piece of balsa wood. Hey! I'm sorry. So Ash has got to go around the rest of the house. I mean, how big is this cabin? I don't know how many rooms there are and what have you. It's deceptively large, this cabin. Is she behind door number 1? Surprise! She's outside! I say she, again, I suspect that's a Shemp. I suspect that's somebody, one of the crew in the wig. That shot definitely is somebody with a terrible wig on and some very slapped together hapdash makeup. As I say, the makeup, some shots, it looks pretty cool, you know, fairly well designed, and it has a very distinctive look. And other times it's very, very hapdash. But again, the energy, the running around, the back and forth, the flying over the camera, under the camera, the crash zooms on Ash's face, it's all very stylized. He's got to go back down into that cellar now. I almost feel like it's a sort of Night of the Living Dead, I don't know, homage maybe. For me, I think I'd just lock myself in the cellar. I mean, what other options could you... You know, you've got 2 demons running around upstairs now, potentially 3. Maybe just stay in the cellar. You've got the shotgun, just stay at the bottom of the stairs. As soon as one pops its head up, bish, bash, bosh. I'd like to think I could survive, you know, a fairly decent amount of time with, you know, demonic friends chasing after me. I think we all think that, though, don't we? Yeah, don't stand under the leaky pipe, Ash. It's not going to end well for you, my friend. It's just another excuse to pour blood all over poor Bruce Campbell's face. Oh, all this blood coming out everywhere. It's fantastic. Filling up the light bulb. That's great. Great touch. Lovely stop motion record player there. Projector coming on by itself. It's a great shot. Blood comes over the projector. Although it's projecting a leaking, pouring blood, and yet the blood is sort of dabbing onto the actual lens itself, so there's a bit of an inconsistency there. Again, I'm overthinking it, and I should be slapped on the wrist. I guess this is almost like the precursor to the tooling up sequence that we'd get later on in Evil Dead 2 and in Army of Darkness and in Ash versus Evil Dead. Like I say, this is the film that started it all. And if you're a big fan of the Evil Dead franchise and, you know, everything that comes along with that, it all started here. And for that alone, it's worth lauding over, especially if you're a horror movie fan, in my opinion. What's great about this film as well, you know, again, all this energy, all this crazy imagery, and then the film still, every now and again, stops, just for a few moments, slows itself down, you recenter, and just like Ash, you then kind of take a breath and then ready to go back at it again. I like that, because you're really with Ash at this point, and you're in his shoes, and you're with him along this fight for survival. And it's great because he's a likeable character, you know, he's distinctive, even visually. And again, sometimes in modern horror, you don't get a lot of that. You don't get a lot of likeable characters, people that you want to see succeed or survive or follow on a journey. And like Ash's mind, the environment's slowly deteriorating and it's becoming more wacky, more surreal, because this is a kind of map into Ash's mind at this point. You would go crazy at this point. I think anybody would. It's great tracking over the top of Ash's head and round to the front of his face. Some great stuff. Dead silent. This is the thing with audio commentaries. I think if you've ever recorded one, it's knowing when you can talk, when you should watch the film, and not getting lost in the film that you're watching if you're a fan of it. Because I just keep staring at the film like, this is great. Like I say, I haven't seen it in a couple of years. The whole house or cabin is just going mental now. It's just crazy. The shutters are banging. There's really cool sound design happening here. We're going to have a really cool visual effect here with the mirror turning into liquid. Great shot. Really effective, really simple. Now, I'm not sure, but I'm wondering if that was a real gunshot through the window. Like, I don't know if it's a real rifle and they're just firing actual rounds. I suspect so, just because of the nature of the film and how it was made. But I don't know. This is what's great. You don't know how much of this is just genuine stuff because of how they made the movie, or if it's makeup or an effect. Like, all the sweat coming off Ash right now, it could genuinely just be the actors sweating after the madness. It reminds me, I think, when like Ash is mumbling to himself and he's got his eyes closed and he's just waiting for the next onslaught. It reminds me of the ending sequence to Alien, when Sigourney Weaver's kind of singing to herself and talking to herself as she's trying to gear herself up emotionally to have the last battle with the alien. It's very remnant of that, I think. What's better, Alien or Evil Dead? Answers on a postcard. The old emotional totem here of the jewellery, the magnifying glass that he gave to his girlfriend all that time ago. I wonder if it's going to come to play in the film. Well, spoilers, it is gonna. Again, we're still in that quiet time. Oh, until the hands come through the door. Join us. I need to get that as a tattoo. Oh, cracking shot right through the face. And the blood pipe there is completely obvious. You can see it full center screen. There's just a big pipe sticking out of her face with the blood splitting through it. Oh. And surprise, surprise, here comes Scotty. So you've got, is it Shelley outside? Scotty inside? Linda's dead? Decapitated? So there's just the two demons. Oh, this is gross. Squeezing out the eyes. I completely forgot about that. That's gross. And that's a fake head. That's a fake face. But it looks really good, actually. He pulls what is a stick out of Scotty's chest. Some people thought, apparently, according to Bruce Campbell, if you ever listen to the official commentary from Bruce Campbell, I think when people originally watched the film in the cinema, they thought it was his penis being pulled out, apparently. But it's not. It's a piece of stick. We can see now Scotty's seems to be smoking on fire because the book, the Necronomicon, is catching on fire. So there's a link there, isn't there? Can you join the dots, folks? Maybe, just maybe, if Ash can get the book and destroy it, it might, in fact, end this madness. So he's been pulled back by Scotty. He's on the floor. The magnifying glass is within reach, but the book is just outside of his reach. And what's pretty cool there is that the chain is in the shape of a skull. Nice little bit of imagery. So the idea originally was going to be that the magnifying glass was going to shine the daylight through, and it was going to magnify through the magnifying glass and set the book on fire, which obviously makes... Well, I don't know if it makes sense, but obviously with the nature of the object itself, it does make some sort of sense, because it's a magnifying glass, and we had been alluding to that through half of the movie. But what in fact happens is that Ash, for some reason, uses it as some sort of hook shot to try and snare the book so he can reach it with the magnifying glass, which doesn't make a massive amount of sense. But he manages it and gets hold of the book and throws it into the fire, stopping Shelley, I think, and Scotty in their tracks, stopping them dead. The book is burning. You've got Shelley there with a really cool looking makeup, and then you've got this pretty cool, if I do say so, yeah, it's dated, but it's a really cool... it's a composite shot, actually. So it's a claymation head, animated head, and then the hair that's falling off is real hair being pulled down, and the body of Scotty is actually twitching. It's a real body. It's really gross, but these are like composite shots. They're okay. The animation's pretty impressive for the time. It's very obvious that it's obviously animated, but you know, live action flames in front, it's not bad. You know, it's okay. There's a couple of dodgy matte lines, but I mean, it works, and it's the animation's gross. So I love this now because Scotty's body's twitching. So what's happening with his body? It takes a long time for something to happen now. He's demons take a long time to die. But this next bit's really cool, I think. So the bodies explode, and out of the bodies come these giant, awesome hands. Which, again, they look really cool. The arms, they look really, high production, very stylized demon arms coming out of the bodies. Again, if this film... I think one of the only downsides, I think, to this film is, as I say, because it was, of the time, incredibly low budget, if no budget. This film, if given a few more, $1,000 or whatever, this, they could have really put some great design work into these makeups and puppets and really, I guess, made the look of the demons and stuff very consistent, at least. And I think that would have really served the film really, really well, because there are just some times where it looks great and you could really see what they were designing and what they were going for, and it has a look, it has a style, and I think they just couldn't do it for I'd say at least half the movie. They just couldn't achieve what they wanted to achieve, and that's a real shame. But you've got to take it for what it is, and it is what it is, and that's fine. But Ash has beaten the demons. He's burnt the book and murdered every single one of his friends. But he's alive, so that's a plus. Beautiful swelling music coming in. And the magnifying glass jewel necklace, even though it didn't really matter that it was a magnifying glass, did come in handy. So there we are. The sun rises. It's a beautiful day. Ash made it through the night. Steps out into the daylight. Everything's gonna be okay now. Or is it? I think Ash deserves a sit and a cup of coffee. You can see on the exterior shot, there's just that, I think it's one of the big floodlights on top of the cabin, which doesn't make much sense because obviously it's this isolated cabin that doesn't even have, like, a toilet. But there's big thingy lights, big floodlights on top of it for no real reason. But here we are. The demon force tracking shot is coming. So maybe, just maybe, Ash didn't really make it after all. And this is a great tracking shot. It goes all the way through the house, all the way through the cabin, right to the front door, breaks the front door in half, and crashes straight into Ash's mouth, ending the Evil Dead movie. Written and directed by Sam Raimi. Produced by Rob Tabbert, and starring Bruce Campbell. And there we have it. That was Evil Dead. So, thank you for joining us for this commentary. It's been great. Hope to do a few more over well, I don't know how long, but over the next few months, I'm going to do a few more of these commentaries. I've been Jonathan Lee Millward. Thank you for joining us for Evil Dead. And if you haven't already, go see Evil Dead Rise. It's a really great next addition to the Evil Dead franchise. See you soon. Bye-bye.